I'm not seeing.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're here to celebrate the birthday of the mainframe. The name of this webinar is Happy Birthday Mainframe, 60 years old and 60 years young. On April 7th, 1964, IBM unveiled System 360, which marked the birth of the mainframe era, setting the stage for 60 years of unparalleled technological advancement. As we celebrate this milestone, we're not just looking back, we're also looking forward. Our esteemed panelists here have agreed to share their insight into the platform and how far it's come over the last 60 years, where we are today, and where they see it going in the next 60 years. I'm very fortunate to be joined by an amazing group of folks who have helped shape and witness the evolution of the platform, as well as those who are leading the charge into the next 60 years. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Donna Hudi, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer and Head of Business Development at Phoenix Software International, as well as the chair of the marketing committee for the Open Mainframe project, and I'll be your moderator today. So with that, let me introduce our panelists. We'll start off with Cheryl Watson. Cheryl is the CEO and co-founder of Watson Walker, which offers practical mainframe performance and measurement advice. Cheryl's known around the world for her passion and enthusiasm for IBM mainframes and the software that runs on them. She's most well known for her ZOS newsletter, Cheryl Watson's Tuning Letter, which has been published since 1991. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Next, we have Derek Britton. With over 30 years of enterprise and mainframe software industry experience, Derek is an accomplished technology leader, writer, and consultant with software development, product and brand marketing, product management, and services experience. Derek regularly commentates across the IT press and at events such as Gartner, Open Mainframe Summit, Share, and GSE. Derek holds a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science from De Montfort University and is the co-founder of the Open Mainframe project COBOL Working Group. Derek is also the author of a recently published Enterprise Tech Journal article named The Mainframe's 60th Birthday and the Jewel in IBM's Crown. The IBM mainframe is the last surviving supersize server on the market. As Derek writes, and Ed recently quoted on LinkedIn, the secret to the IBM mainframe success is no secret at all. Its attention to detail matters on a grand scale across key categories. It's a great read, and May will provide a slide near the end with a QR code to that article, as well as one for the white paper published recently by the Open Mainframe project titled Mainframes the Next 60 Years, where several industry leaders share their insights on how the mainframe will continue to lead the way for innovation in the next 6 decades. Welcome, Derek.
Donna.
Our next panelist is Ed Jaffe. Ed is the CTO at Phoenix Software International. He began his software development career by writing applications for government and research organizations in Washington, D.C. After moving to Los Angeles in 1982, he transitioned to the banking industry and eventually joined Phoenix Software in 1987. He became manager of research and development in the mid-1990s and was named the chief technology officer in 2009. Ed has participated as a Share volunteer for nearly 30 years, most recently as the Share Core Platform Focus Area Leader, and is recognized throughout the mainframe community as a subject matter expert and a strong advocate for the IBM Z platform. Welcome, Ed.
Thanks for having me.
Next, we have Jakub Balhar. He is a principal product owner at Broadcom. He's a long-term enthusiast who's interested in building more secure solutions. He currently leads Zoe as the Technology Steering Committee Chair, the API Mediation Layer Squad Lead, and the product owner for API Mediation Layer within Broadcom. He previously worked in the space-related business, collaborating with NASA and ESA as GSAT's Head of Application Development. Welcome, Jakub.
Thanks for having me here.
And then last but not least, we have Jessielaine Punongbayan. Jessielaine, also known as Jelly, which I can't mess up, is a support engineer and tech evangelist at Dynatrace, an AI-powered monitoring tool. She's held various roles such as product owner, team leader, open source contributor, mainframe modernization ambassador, writer, conference speaker, software engineer, and hackathon winner. So welcome, Jelly.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you for having me.
Now, before we get started, I happen to have it on good authority that Cheryl may be indulging in a little bit of the hair of the dog this morning after she partied like a rock star last night to celebrate her 80th birthday. And there are the balloons. Now, Cheryl, my gift to you is that I will not sing to you. Nobody wants to hear me sing. But
Well,
if any of our other panelists would like to honor you with a rendition of Happy Birthday, they are welcome to do so.
No, please.
All right. Well, happy birthday, Cheryl.
Thanks.
So to kick us off, I'd like to ask our panelists one of two questions. You can choose exactly which one you want to answer. Anyone in general, what is your favorite thing about the platform? Or maybe for those veterans on the panel with a little more history, if you had to pick one thing that you think is the single most exciting piece of innovation that's come out on the platform over the last 60 years, what would that be? So, Cheryl, since you're front and center, why don't you go ahead and start?
Well, I think it's the 360 itself. I am at 80, I'm probably the only one here that remembers programming by wire on a 405 IBM. I wrote a payroll system in 4K of overlays in autocoder. The 360 itself was the most exciting thing to happen because IBM put a lot of money into it, and what they did was they made a platform that didn't have to convert every single program going forward. Programs written 60 years ago can run today. And a lot of that is thanks to COBOL, Derek. I have to put that in because they designed it so that you didn't have to convert programs.
That's awesome.
That's it.
Okay. Who's next? And who wants to add to that? I see.
Well, let me just say, it's funny because my answer is almost the same, except that obviously coming from it a couple of maybe decades after you did, Cheryl, I had experience with a bunch of different architectures, Intel and Motorola 68,000, and I worked on some Wang equipment and on the IBM mainframe. And I really, from a architecture standpoint, from all of those, I said, the IBM mainframe is the one that makes the most sense to me. It's the most canonical. It's the most symmetrical. Everything about it. It had an assembler language you could actually write and understand and maintain. I loved it, but I didn't realize, I was too young to understand that businesses were having real constraints. And I think it was about 1983 when MVSXA came out, I was so blown away. I read the whole principles of operation. This is about like my 10th time, right? If you count all the other times. And I was, first of all, I was blown away by the technology, the fact that they had increased the memory space 128-fold. But what really blew me away was the fact that the 24-bit programs didn't have to change. They created a bimodal architecture that completely made all these changes 100% transparent. And that's when I realized IBM's commitment to its customers in terms of investment protection They made sure those customers didn't have to make any changes. And then they did the exact same thing with Z architecture when it came out around the turn of the century, 1999, 2000. Now we have a tri-modal architecture. And believe it or not, I'm sure that the 24-bit programs I wrote in 1978 probably still work today. I'm sure they do. And it's just, to me, what that tells me is, even though my crystal ball doesn't work very well, or else if it did, I'd be a rich man with stocks, that going forward, whatever happens as we go forward, we know that that investment protection will still be there. Customers will be able to take advantage of all the new stuff. Optionally, the old stuff will still continue to work and they won't have to make any changes. And to me, that was just, it was a cathartic moment when I was 22 years old and I saw that, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable that they did this. So it's almost the same as you, Cheryl, just a little bit later on. But I came to the same conclusion.
Right.
I saw a topic in Reddit before that one of the engineers has an inheritance from their parents, and that's the COBOL program that their parents wrote, and he was able to edit it when he joined the same company, and I thought that was really, really amazing.
It's like, hey, Dad, this code, this
Yeah.
routine right here is not all that great. I'm going to fix it for you.
I mean, that's a very important point, though, because when you do think back, when whoever came up with the great ideas that they did, they had to protect themselves from an unknown future, and that was why they had to build things that would last, that would scale no matter what the future brought. And of course, things have changed beyond recognition several times over since 1964, and certainly since 1960 when COBOL was first devised. But they share a common synergy, mainframe and COBOL, that sits upon it, in terms of no one knew back then what would happen to the world of science, and what would happen to technology, and what would happen to computing, and what would happen to the end user community, and what they needed computers to do. And it's a testament to what IBM did and what others have done to make sure that the technology has survived and indeed thrived during that time. I mean, the IBM mainframe is the only mainframe brand that's going to be left in a few years' time. The other competitors still on the market is doing away with them. So IBM has got it right, because it invested very cleverly in ensuring that no matter what they built back then, could carry on and leapfrog up over itself into the future. And I think when you consider how you measure success of anything, if you can measure a technology in terms of its gross economic value it brings to the global economy, it's completely unrivaled in that regard. You know you've done something right. And so, and for that reason alone, you would expect us to last for decades into the future, because of its critical importance to keeping the world going right.
Jakub?
Okay. It seems that as I'm the youngest one to the mainframe world, I'm the one who breaks the things. I believe that the ZOS is doing great job in not breaking COBOL programs. I've seen too many breaking changes in my 4 years of tenure here to say that it's not breaking things. And we may have introduced some of them, so I'm taking my part of the blame. But what I really like is the community of the people where even plenty of people who are basically retiring in a few years are still willing to try, test, and play with the new stuff, even though they could just easily support their babies, their 60-year-old programs. Instead, they are also looking into how to educate and live and learn together with the new generation that's gonna inherit their work.
Yeah. Same with me. I mean, I agree with Jakub. For me, one of the most exciting things that I witness with mainframe is that it's still improving. As time goes by, it's not just like stable, but it's continuously improving. And I love what Open Mainframe project has done, like with the APIs and everything, because you are able to, how do you say it, investigate, and as well as, try it out, and, just challenge yourself. And I love the community as well, that they are very helpful, that, they are willing to break mainframe and test everything out so that they could create a stable product.
So if we talk about evolution, right? So, everything evolves over time. We've talked about, 360 and when it first came out and Cheryl writing, programs in 4K and all of that. But because things do evolve and have evolved over the years, how do you think things are different now from what it was back then, right? What evolution do you see happening? Perceptions, things like that.
Well,
I can start. I saw
It's
the least of it,
Yeah.
and what I'm seeing is that it's opening to the world. Like it's now not just being closed somewhere, solving its own problems, but it's opening to integrate with the rest of the world now. That's changed meanwhile.
yeah, I was going to say we're
It's
bringing
your-
in a lot of ideas from other platforms, mainly from Linux, I would say,
Mm.
or the Unix world. And they have done a lot of work on that. It started many years ago with Open Edition, but now, I mean, you saw just recently, they now have a container platform for Unix applications on ZOS. So that just shows you that that a lot of this stuff's being brought in, new languages, new concepts, new ideas. And to the old timers there, it's increasing the complication of their world, right? Everybody calls it simplification, but for them it's actually complication because you got all this new stuff. But for the new people coming in, the idea is, hey, we don't have to learn anything new. We can use our same tools and same ideas and same languages on this platform, not just under Linux, but also under ZOS. And I think it's very exciting because really you kind of get the best of both worlds. It's pretty cool to be able to be in the middle of a ZOS Unix script and you're like, I wish I could do this in Unix, but I can't. But guess what? I can make a call out to a native ZOS function, get this thing done, have it come back and keep going in my shell script. So it is really a great merging of technologies that is better than the sum of them both, I think.
And Derek and Cheryl, what do you see from the perspective of perspectives, right? When you're out talking to customers, you're out talking to the customer base. Do you see perceptions have changed over the years? Are they continuing to change?
Well, I think the biggest change and for the old timers is the fact that IBM is really trying to automate a lot of the things that they still clasp to their little hands, being the only person that knows how to do A, B, and C, and not using the automation that that ZOS has made affordable, or made available. Workload Manager was one of the very first things that tried to take that mini manipulation away from the programmer. Instead of setting all these OPT settings and dispatch priorities, they said, give me a goal. And that was a big thing that developers, I'm sorry, ZOS programmers saw. The other thing they saw was, or something similar to that, was ZOS Myth. And they're still fighting that because it had a really rough start. And it's still difficult for some people. But IBM's intention is to make as much of this automatic, and people don't like to give up their controls. Hi, Derek. You're back.
He's back. So Go ahead, Ed.
Well, I was just going to say, I feel like I'm just the opposite. If somebody gives me
Here I
a
am. Apologies.
tool that gets something done in a minute that used to take me all day, I'm going to use that tool. And there's no way I'm clinging to some, ancient, I'm too busy to like spend way too much time on stuff. If I've got a great tool to use it, I'll use it. And I honestly, I find it hard to imagine people being so, wedded to some manual process that they don't want to use automation for it. But I guess they're out there, but not in our
Yeah,
shop.
I met some. Like when I was presenting, they were, let's say they disagree with what I showed, like regarding automation. But I think it's rooted to maybe, I don't know, fear, or maybe like they don't know how to do it and they're afraid to try it out. I'm not sure, but some people have fear of trying things out, and if they don't know it, they don't really want to try it.
Is there also a little bit of a disconnect too, though? So, it's great to have automation and have something that makes your life easier. Like Ed said, something that I can, tool I can use to get the job done in 5 minutes. But if that tool breaks, isn't there benefit to having understood how to do it the old way or the long way, if you will?
Agree. Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to learn new things and then go back if it doesn't work.
Well, sometimes these tools are actually wrappers around the other stuff. And if you don't really understand what's going on under the covers, then it can be hard to debug things. So I think we're always going to need engineers that understand the stuff that's down at the lowest level. But, increasingly, I think we've all seen this, those engineers, people that really know, for example, assembler language, they're now mostly working for ISVs and no longer working in ordinary client environments the way they used to. I mean, it used to be a system programmer actually programmed. Now, when they call them a system programmer, they're mainly people that administer systems. And the newer term, the term that came in from the outside, really, sysadmin, is sort of applies better to what they're doing. They're not really writing code. Most of the code writers now are at IBM and ISVs. So that's where those engineers are going.
Great. So if we're talking about things like ZOSMF and
Birthday girl's finger is up.
Oh, I see her. There you go for it, Cheryl.
I think your original question, which I didn't answer, was what are the customers, the actual users, seeing? And I don't think I answered that. But what I'm seeing from the actual customers, the main thing they see is improved response time. I remember when 2-second TSO response time was considered great. Now, if you don't get it back the instant you hit the enter key, something's wrong. And I think from a customer point of view, that's the main thing they've seen is an improvement in response time. That's all I.
Isn't it funny how
think you're
there's
right,
a double
Cheryl.
standard? Oh, go ahead, Derek.
Well, I think that's come just because, like, this generation, I'm just going to talk in vague terms about generations, so I don't actually, age shame anybody. But this generation is a lot less patient about the results it needs. Everything has to be instantaneous. It's the instant copy generation. If you're not getting a response back from your app, whatever it is, wherever it's getting its data from, and because most people don't know where it's getting its data from, and the answer is typically the mainframe for big stuff. If that's not coming back sub-second, you're like, well, I'll just get a different app. I'll use a different supplier. It's a commodity market, right? You don't care how you consume your data as long as you consume it quickly. And I think the you know, the modern trend for instant gratification of whatever it is you are doing, including a service that you might be consuming through technology. That has raised all ships. Everything has to be sub-second. Everything has to be as fast as everything else. Otherwise, the market will vote with its feet and go somewhere else. So I think if there's a sort of significant difference that the mainframe world has probably inherited somewhat from other markets or from other technologies, is this more modern approach to, shall we say, gratification of information. Get me what I need to know immediately. I think it was already on that trajectory anyway, but I think the demands of the average person in the marketplace now just dictates that that's exactly how things have to operate. But I'll still speak to people, and they don't realize that their banking application is getting mainframe data to tell them how much money is in their bank account. They don't know that that's what's happening behind the scenes. So there's still a sort of great unknown that people are like, well, I don't know where it comes from, and frankly, I don't care. And perhaps nor should they. But actually, it's, you know, we all know what's going on behind the scenes.
There is still a little bit of a double standard in the ZOS area anyway, where, you know, if TSO response time isn't, you know, a tenth of a second, heads will roll. But if they go out to ZOSMF or some other browser-based thing, they don't mind if it spins for a couple of seconds like this, you know, and then it comes back. They, you know, they're used to that. So for some reason, they, you know, certain applications have to be, you know, CICS, for example, Kix has to fly, but a browser-based front end, no, they're okay with a little bit of a delay there.
I would disagree. They are quite unhappy with it and they are hating it for this specific reason.
Okay. Well,
I think they're
good,
just
good, because that's what we want. We want fast browser-based interfaces.
Yes.
I think they just don't have a choice, but you know, they hate that as well.
Maybe that's what it is. So far, it's the best they can do. So
Yeah.
So Jakub, talk to us a little bit about, you know, we've been talking about ZOSMF and things like that. Talk to us a little bit about Zoe and what Zoe has kind of brought to the table over the course of time.
So I would say that Zoe is trying to bring mainframe to 21st century, kicking, dragging, and screaming. It's quite happy in the 20s and very good at it, far better than we are in the 21st. But apart from that, we are actually mainly providing the interfaces to integrate, to make it easier for people to use their environments that they are already used to. So using tools like VS Code and IntelliJ IDEA that's common for the Java developers that are having their applications deployed on mainframe now. We are making sure that the COBOL developers, at least from the next gen, also gets the tooling that's what we kind of expect in the distributed world, e.g., very fast responses, highlighting, AI-assisted automation, and like support in explaining what the code does and helping you do good decisions and helping you remove some of the boilerplate code and writing it for you. And apart from that, we are also making it easier for everyone to expose the APIs from the platform, like the APIs to manage the platform. We are still in the infrastructure. Zoe is about infrastructure and developing for the platform.
Great. So if we bring that, you know, let's bring that a little further. So one of the biggest complaints we hear today, right, is about mainframe skills, right? So that coupled with you've all mentioned it a couple of times now, COBOL, right? And how much COBOL is out there, and the aging workforce and the lack of COBOL skills that exist out there today. And I guess the question that I have is that, you know, all that COBOL is out there and it's working. So if it's not broken, why does it need to be fixed? And how do we address that, the biggest complaint, which is the skills gap? And Derek, I'll ask you to go first because, you know, you're part of the founding member of the COBOL working group within the Open Mainframe project. So, I mean, it's kind of your thing to help us try and address that, right?
Really reasonable that I have an opinion. Yeah, I guess. Well, I think, I mean, before I sort of try and describe this, COBOL was effectively sort of microcosmic in terms of its relationship to the mainframe. They kind of suffer the same inaccurate public perception. In the sense of if people don't know about it, if they don't know about something that's working just fine and it's not newsworthy because it's working just fine, they start to mistrust it because they don't understand it. And the common misperception of the mainframe environment and COBOL and many other aspects of that world is that if I don't understand it, I will therefore think there's something wrong with it. And if something's old, most old things are seen sort of somewhat negatively, not fairly, but they are, a bit dusty, But again, that's just a bias issue, and it's not founded in reality. The issue is one of skills, though, because if there are fewer and fewer practitioners in the mainframe or the COBOL space, simply because thanks to the success of the platform or the success of the language, any sort of sensible prediction of how long those things would last has been beaten. 60 years is phenomenal in technology years. 65 too is like, these are phenomenal tenures for mainframe COBOL to have existed. So it's far exceeded anyone's expectation, far outlasted the people who were originally around to develop the ideas in the first place. Well, with fewer cheerleaders saying this stuff is great, you should use it, it just naturally holds that the larger majority of people who don't know much about it are going to continue to be ignorant and therefore, fearful or mistrusting of the environment. So that has to be fixed. So IT skills and appropriate skills for the environment is a huge existential challenge for the mainframe environment, but it's a very, very solvable one. But I'm putting to everyone here, everyone listening, that just because an idea is an old idea doesn't make it a bad idea and doesn't mean that the idea needs to be replaced. So, there are other old ideas that are perfectly acceptable and in common usage. I have something on my desk here, and it's called a telephone. It's based on a fairly old idea. It's not an old model. Well, actually, it is a few years out of date, but I still carry on using a telephone. On my drive outside, there's something called a motor car. It's another very old idea, but no one's convinced me yet that I need to replace it with a spaceship because, they haven't really caught up yet. They're not quite ready for market. So, the idea that something being old therefore has to be retired because it's out of date in technology terms is absolute nonsense. It's just then a case of, right, who is in the next generation of people that are going to carry this message forward and make sure everyone is sufficiently educated in what to do. It's as simple as that.
I completely agree with you, Derek. Just for grins, I was checking out Wiki today for COBOL. Wiki says it's a dead language. I don't know what we need to do to change that, but it needs to be changed because it's not a dead language. I used to teach COBOL, and it would take at most 2 weeks to thoroughly understand COBOL. Now since then, it's had a lot more features and functions, and it can do a lot more. But it is the easiest language to pick up for somebody brand new. And I am so excited the Open Mainframe project has a special COBOL group within it because I think it's so important. These COBOL programs are not going to go away. They are with us forever and hopefully will be. The one thing I think about when I think about COBOL is I used to teach structured programming. And structured programming was inline, so it was very easy to understand. And in COBOL, what that said is the main line said, perform A, perform B, perform C. And then when you got to A, it said, perform D, perform E, perform F. And I just start thinking what that is doing to the cache, the memory cache in ZOS as you go branching around all of these different places, because it's not really good, but it's very easy to understand.
Well, let me just say that the COBOL language, not only has it evolved, but the compiler now uses the same backend that it uses for Java. The very same unbelievably highly optimized compiler backend that they use to do the JIT and everything else is being used for COBOL. And so COBOL screams, it just does. Caches or no, performs or no. It's, because it's been optimized so much. That the people in Toronto really deserve a lot of credit for the work that they've done, not only to Java, but also to COBOL. And a lot of what we've done in our architecture over the last, I'm going to say 10 years at least, have really been a collaboration between the software people and the hardware people, which didn't exist back in the 60s. The hardware people just said, here's the instructions you have, go write code. But now the people that are writing code get to say to the hardware people, hey, you know what we really need is this. And a lot of that came from the Java people. And those improvements that they have done the past 10 years are now inherited by COBOL because it's using that very same backend. So, it's all, one big happy family, I guess, if you want to look at it like that. But as far as the programmers go, I'm really glad Zoe's around because that environment and bringing, what the Zoe folks are doing there. Honestly, we talked a little bit about ZOSMF. Nobody said anything bad about it yet, so I'll be the first one to say that the user experience trying to use ZOSMF is subpar. And if you look at what Zoe is doing, it is far more like what modern expectations would have. And when you put, and the great thing though is that Zoe really depends on ZOSMF. So ZOSMF is there providing APIs, and Zoe's using them to provide a front end that really looks good, much better than the native stuff that you would find with ZOSMF.
And when you consider the next generation, people are going to be coding all of these really important applications that must not fail.
No.
Oh no.
Oh no. Derek froze. All right.
He's probably
Well,
coming all the
you
way from
can
the
see the
UK.
answer. You can see the answer to his question. We will just fail occasionally instead of having the application that doesn't fail.
Right.
Hopefully he'll return.
I'm watching your face, Jakub, as Ed was talking back there, and whether you agreed with him or maybe not.
Yeah, well, I actually think that COBOL in itself is not difficult. Like, it's a language that any decent programmer can learn in 2 days. The problem is elsewhere, and it's in the code itself. There is a lot of it. Lots of it has been with us for tens of years, and any code that's been with us for 20, 25 years, it's difficult to understand usually. There are few exceptions. But like code bases of Java code bases that are 20 years old now, it requires lots of experience to even find the right places to start looking for the things you need. And to some extent, this is the same for COBOL, and we are just creating the same problem in other languages that we will see in 10 years.
So do you think instead of rewriting the COBOL programs, maybe just suggest to optimize it and make it,
And add
you know,
automated testing and make sure that the things that needs to be documented are documented, and improve the practices, like just like with any other thing that we are working on. Like, it's living organism. Let's improve the living organism instead of trying to kill it and create a new one.
I like that,
Docu-
calling it a living organism.
Documentation is so important too. I mean, we
Oh.
have, if you have the people around still that wrote something, it seems easy. But when they're not around and you're going, wow, where do we start? And if the product, if the code isn't documented enough for you to really understand it, it is just a huge chore. And sometimes I think people do get frustrated, and that's when they go off and rewrite something from scratch. And that's just a waste of resources.
And also, it's one of the things where the AI can help us, because like it's not really good at writing code, and it will get better for sure, but it's not there yet. But it's really good in understanding what the code does, even if it's a rather convoluted code, even if it wasn't written really well and it just lives because it was written. This is where it can help us a lot in keeping the COBOL living and improve it instead of moving elsewhere.
That's a great use case. Great point there.
And
Derek, you're back.
And Derek's back.
Hey.
And Jakub, that's a great segue into my asking you to venture with me into the land of the matrix, and let's talk about the future a little bit. Let's talk about AI, sorry, AI, Chat GPT, all those things. Where do you, all of these things that are the next best things since sliced bread, if you will. Where do you see all of that going? Where do you see that taking us in the next, 60 years and beyond? And Jelly, I know that you work very closely with AI at Dynatrace.
Yeah.
So
So right now, my vision for AI, at least what I'm seeing with Dynatrace right now, is that they're using AI for monitoring, for mainframe monitoring. So because data is already there, the data for the kicks, for the IMS, the real-time data that's passing, it's already there, and so they could use AI to create, let's say, topologies, to create traces, and to visualize your data so that you can do some predictions as to what could happen in your LPAR, like those monitoring situations. And I see it improving more and more as long as we have a lot of data, because data is always available for us, and so we could use AI to check more about maybe security vulnerabilities and other things.
As a programmer, I'd love to have AI where I could say to it, all right, I need a routine that does this, but I don't really want to write it right now. You can do that. That's the easy part. I'll concentrate on the business logic and let the AI provide me with building blocks that it claims work and hopefully do work. And I could see people becoming a lot more productive if they could have building blocks supplied to them by some sort of a AI, like, I don't know, if I was on Star Trek, I'd say computer and it would say back to me working, and then I would ask it to do this thing and it would do it. So, maybe one day. For now, at the moment, when I want to write code, I write it.
GitHub Copilot does that, right? Or it's not with mainframe programs? I'm not sure.
It has some limitations. You really have to go through the code that's being written. Like, it's the idea. It's on the way to get there. But I would argue that it still needs a bit more time to really get there, where you can be certain that it does what it believes it does, that it does it well, that there are no security bugs, and that there are no performance and bugs. It's a great assistant, but it's not at this level that was outlined yet.
So it's not going to run the world at this point, right? We're not
Not
giving
yet,
it the
not
keys
yet.
to the kingdom.
Well, given how we run our world, maybe the randomness would be better.
Well, you have to remember that anything that's written trying to do AI is written by humans, and we make mistakes. Now, I make mistakes. I don't know about any of you, but there can be mistakes. I did see a hopeful move toward when IBM bought IntelliMagic, they brought with them a lot of AI around measuring and monitoring SMF and the topologies of the systems, and they're adding AI to monitoring the system. And I think that's a good thing to help all the ZOS system programmers around. But I, like everyone else, am a little nervous about AI because it's not proven yet, but I can see instances of it.
You hear all the jokes and the horror stories about, you know, people trying to use AI or trying to use Chat GPT and coming back with something that's like totally off the wall and doesn't make any sense. And yeah, so.
Yeah,
It
it's not
hallucinates.
sophisticated enough yet, is it? No, I don't think anyone thinks it is, but I think there will be moments where it can be used quite quickly in certain use cases. Where AI and the mainframe have a really strong future ahead, though, is that, you know, for AI to work in a production scale capacity, it needs to learn from an awful lot of data. And you know, there are stories you read about, you know, how many metric tons of power are being consumed just running some AI engines in some cloud center. But the reality is that the more data it can feed off, the more accurate, valid data it can feed off, the faster it will learn, the better it will become more quickly. And so those large models that have to be built based on, you know, terabytes and terabytes of data. Well, the mainframe serves that purpose quite well, because guess where most of the world's data resides? You know, you can see there's a sort of a join between those two initiatives coming very, very soon, if it's not happening already behind the covers. So, you know, I mean, I'm quite encouraged to see what will happen as a result of that, because I think if AI is going to accelerate its ability to do things really, really smartly, it's going to have to do that by learning from data. And the best way to do that is to find where the biggest pools of correct data. It's no good learning from bad data. Don't trawl the internet if you're doing a Google search and believe everything you read. I mean, Cheryl found out today that COBOL was dead just by going to Wiki. It just goes to show how wrong you can be. So, you know, you've got to learn from valid data, not incorrect data.
Agree
That's a
with that.
good point. From the system of record. You want to learn from the system of record, and the mainframe is by far generally the system of record.
Well, the other thing about AI is that it is poor Derek is frozen again. The thing you need to consider about AI is how important it is for companies in understanding their competition, in that they have to be competitive. And to be competitive, you need to know what's happening with all your customers. And that is an AI type of function. That is going to, as we've said, really increase the load on ZOS, on the mainframe. And I don't think that is going to reduce at all in the future.
Right. Okay. So with that, I'm going to throw out a final set of questions to our panelists to answer before we close out today. So the two questions, they're aware of one, they're not aware of the other one. Is the first one is, if you could be remembered for one thing that you've done around this platform, what would that be? And then the second question is, if you were at Cheryl's blowout birthday party, what would be your cocktail of choice? So we'll start with the birthday girl.
Okay. I think the biggest contribution I've made is workload manager. We created a quick start policy because workload manager was not being accepted by the community. IBM was really struggling getting anything going on that. I had several conversations with IBM execs on that, and workload manager at the time, the team, and I worked very hard to create a quick start policy that is now the basis for most of the policies in play today. And my cocktail of choice is, because I'm really not a drinker, is what I had at my party was a light sparkling Moscati wine.
That sounds yummy.
Does that count as a cocktail? I guess alcoholic drink
It's
of choice. Let's
Yes.
not make it a cocktail.
alcoholic drink of choice, yes.
Adult beverage of
Adult
choice.
beverage, libation, whatever you want to call it. Ed, you're front and center. Go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, a lot of people have said that they like my presenting style and stuff like that. And I'm pretty proud to have just recently got that Distinguished Speaker Award from Cher. The cynical side of me says they're just trying to get rid of me. Now I'm not allowed, I'm not, eligible to win any more Best Session Awards. But no, honestly, I have, one of the technologies I fell in love with back in like the early 80s was Jez 3. And I really admired what they had done, and I was very, excited about it. But it was kind of a weak sister and an underdog, and a lot of shops were getting off of Jez 3 back then. And so, and part of the reason was because they didn't have an SDSF for Jez 3. So I wrote one, and I had many, many, many customers over the years tell me that that one piece of software really saved Jez 3 in their environment, literally for decades. And then, and then IBM decided they were going to sunset Jez 3 because they didn't want to have to maintain two different ones. And, we fought to try to get IBM to change their mind, but ultimately that wasn't a possibility. So we thought outside the box, and now Jez 3 is here at Phoenix Software. And so we're now enhancing it and improving it and doing, a lot of really great things with it. So, if people want to remember me as the Jez 3 guy and the guy that saved Jez 3, that'd be just fine. And I think I'd have a drink to that. What would I drink? Ordinarily, I don't drink cocktails. I drink just straight cask strength, barrel strength bourbon. But if I really do like cocktails on occasion, I will drink a margarita. So there you go. Happy birthday, Cheryl.
Jelly, go for it.
So for me, to be honest, I want to be remembered as a modern mainframe advocate. So I do love writing about modern mainframe and creating POCs on how to use REST APIs or creating your mobile application, like extending Zoe Explorer. So I do want to be remembered on those kinds of things, and maybe remember me as somebody who's helpful and kind to them, answering their questions. Hopefully.
Nice.
And my drink of choice would be amaretto sour or dark and stormy. Happy birthday, Cheryl.
Oh, nice. Okay. Jakub?
So I don't think I will be remembered, but if I will be remembered, it's gonna be remembered for Zoe. But what I think that may have an impact, even though most people will never know, is the security behind and how we are doing our best to change how the open source is being secured. What does secure mean for open source, and how we make sure that this is at the same level at least as the OS, and sometimes we are trying to get better. And as for a drink of choice, I'm a teetotaler, so I will go with cocktail, not alcoholic, and I will take Virgin Pina Colada.
Okay.
That's a good flavor. I like that.
Yes.
I'm down with that.
Derek. Oh, he's frozen
He's
again.
still thinking.
Oh no, he's still thinking about it. Okay. Well, while he's thinking about it, before we wrap up here, we do have 4 things in the Q&A that I want to kind of go
Curious.
through real quick. Oh, do we have Derek back?
Derek's back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Getting
Derek.
quick.
Oh, well, it's easy for me. I want to be the guy that gets remembered for being the one with the terrible internet connection. That like to talk about COBOL. There you go. And drink of choice. I'll have one each of what you're having.
Oh, nice. I'm with you.
Wow.
Should be gin and tonic if you're in the UK, right?
I should. I'll have one of those as well.
All right.
So real quick, I want to call out, there's a couple of questions and actually some comments in the Q&A. So our friend John Baker says that he agrees with the increased demands for performance. And given this, why does the performance discipline not receive commensurate attention from executives? Does anyone have a quick response to that? I see Cheryl shaking her head.
I don't know. It's beyond me.
Okay. John also adds, he's quite chatty in the Q&A today. He says, he also says that many sites are still using Cheryl's quick start policy today with a smiley face. And Just 3 Plus works great. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, John.
And
You
then
know,
fine.
I was
Go
going to
ahead.
say about performance. I think part of it is just that we've done such a good job on our platform, and I don't think any platform is better instrumented than ZOS is. I mean, what you can get from SMF is just unbelievable. And so I think a lot of people take our performance for granted. You know, we have very good performance. We have very smart people that have done a lot of work to try to ensure that, and I've met some just incredible people. I mean, obviously we're talking to John, who's one of them, and Cheryl's on this call, but there's a lot of other people and people at IBM, Dan Rosa and people like that. They're just incredible. So honestly, I think the executives kind of take it for granted. They don't realize how much goes into making our platform screen the way it does. And you know, I guess there's more to do there, and maybe that's what John's after, and they're gonna notice it when they start crunching AI stuff on there. But you know, it's something that they just take. You know, they say, oh, the mainframe, it's fast. Well, of course it's fast because a lot of people put a lot of effort into making it fast.
Well, I will say that, you know, my newsletter is all about performance. And the companies, we've had companies with us since 91 that are still wanting that performance information. So I don't think it's dead. I think it's kind of under the covers a little.
But I think the question was whether or not the executives, the C-suite, pay enough attention to it. And probably the folks reading your newsletter are more like down in the trenches. And
Yeah.
but I will say one thing, 100% true. Our WLM policy is based on your quick start, Cheryl. I think like every other one in the world.
Right.
That's where it started.
So we have 2 more. We have from John Taff. We have, what do you see in the future 5 to 15 years for Barry's MXG software?
You'll have to ask Barry.
Yeah. Do we really want to comment on someone else's product?
Yeah. Okay.
I'll say this, Barry, he travels the world. He's like, seems to be semi-retired, but yet he's very active and very responsive. And if something new comes out in SMF, boom, He's got it in his product like that. So he hasn't given up. He's out there. Now, whether or not he decides to, I don't know, have somebody else acquire it or not, that'll be up to him. But at the moment, he seems to be pretty vibrant and right on top of it from what I can tell.
Okay, and then Scott Engelman, I'll just answer you real quick. Yes, we have talked about that, and this has been recorded, so May will send out the recording. So I want to thank you. People are starting to leave. We've hit the top of the hour. May has a slide up on the screen where you have the QR codes to the previously mentioned white paper and Derek's article, so please take advantage of that. And then May, if you want to go to the next slide, please connect with the Open Mainframe Project on Twitter, LinkedIn, and the like, YouTube. And I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank Jakub, Jelly, Ed, Cheryl, and Derek for what has been a very interesting conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.